Coffee Kareem podcast.
They stayed close. Mashallah, that looks like tea. I thought this was coffee with Kareem.
No, don't tell anybody.
You're gonna have to hide the tea bag. Um,
No, I'm a fan of tea too.
yeah.
What did they? Alan Watts said, if Christianity is wine and Islam is coffee, then Buddhism is certainly tea or something. Anyways,
I hadn't heard that one.
I'm very excited about this Five Before College project, and I'm sure you talking about it, why you started it, what is it about, why does it matter, is going to naturally connect for us around your experience as an educator amongst the Muslim community, being a writer. Also, for those listening and not watching, Hamzah is also a convert and has a different background and story and history around that. And recently, we actually lost Hamzah's father. He died, as your father would like it, very straight, according to the blog I read. But God rest his soul. And there's a powerful legacy here in the Henshaw family. It's a very cool kind of Aborigine American. I know you have history and roots to the Pilgrims as well. I remember you shared with me the story around your heritage. So it's like as white as you get here, folks. But this guy, mashallah, is he's on the path of Sunnat al-Rasul, and God bless him and his family. Yes.
Yeah, my friends like to tell me that I'm white as the driven snow. Alhamdulillah, fortunately, we're not allowed to display our auras in Islam, so I will not show you my stomach to confirm that. But alhamdulillah, as you said, I did. My father did die this last Wednesday. May Allah have mercy on him. He was a really amazing man, and huge influence on me. And he was suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's in the last decade of his life. So in a lot of ways, my primary feeling was really one of relief that his quality of life had not been great towards the end of his life, and I'm glad. I'm also grateful, alhamdulillah, that he was able to say the kalima a number of times. Various people visited him. My brother and his wife took amazing care of him for many years, and we give him lots of da'wah, and so inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept him, and inshallah reunite us in the akhirah, inshallah. So jazakallah khair.
Ameen ya Rab. Wow. So how your father, did you accept Islam at a young age? And if so, how did your father deal with it at that time? And was it different than how he related to it over the years?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, so I as you said, my family is very American. Both my mother and father's side, we can trace our ancestry back to the Mayflower and so on. And within my dad's family, there was a tradition of going to St. Mark's, which is a boarding school outside of Boston. So my grandfather had gone there, my great uncle, eventually my father, my uncle, one of my cousins. So there was a big family tradition of going there. Neither of my brothers had gone to St. Mark's, so when I was the last chance. My dad was actually on the board of trustees at that point, and so I guess I had a choice, but I pretty much didn't. I had to go to St. Mark's, which was a wonderful school for me. I had a great time, and the most important thing that happened to me was that is where I became Muslim. So I became Muslim in 1994 when I was about 15 years old, at a boarding school, and we can certainly go into that story. I don't know how you want to take the conversation, but my father, mashallah, from day one was very, very accepting of that. I guess later in his life he went to the Unitarian Universalist Church, and it was very much sort of ecumenical in his views and so on. And if anything, I think he saw that it gave me an edge in the college admissions process as like a white Muslim, something a little different. So he was seeing it from
Right.
the Machiavellian
Diversity,
perspective.
a
Um,
diversity,
right,
a
like,
diversity
oh,
value
great.
point.
Now my white son has some diversity. But no, he was very accepting. I think probably, most of my family figured it was a stage that people go through. But even as I, stuck to it, and it became, my uh, primary guiding force in my life, he was always very, very supportive, as were the other members of my family.
MashaAllah. What was it about Islam that made you interested in it at that age? Like most kids would be probably maybe thinking about a number of other things at the time. Were you generally interested in philosophy?
Um, I don't know if I would put it in such big words as that. I think I always had definitely a belief in God. My mother is Episcopalian, and I did used to go to church and to a youth group, and the whole concept of the Trinity never did much for me. I never quite understood that, but I definitely had a belief in a higher power in God. Um, but really, at St. Mark's, it was more, there was a student there, Nabil, who I imagine you might know as well. He was one of my classmates, so I met him when I was in ninth grade, way back in 1992. So he had a fascinating background. He was Gujarati Indian, so like that's where his ancestry came from. But he was born in Kenya in East Africa. He grew up eventually in London, and then his family moved to Vancouver, and then he was studying at boarding school and outside of Boston. So very sort of exotic background. And he actually came from an Ismaili family, which is a sect of Shia Islam. And he had sort of a conversion to sort of more, Sunni Islam the year before he came to St. Mark's. And he'd actually spent time going out on Jamaat, Tablighi Jamaat, for 40 days right before he came to St. Mark's. So he was, his iman and his amal were at a very sort of high level. He was running hot, as they say, and
MashaAllah.
had a lot of fikr for dawah and so on. So, so we were living in the dorm, and you obviously are living right with each other. You brush your teeth together. So in the evenings, we'd be getting ready for bed, and everyone would be brushing their teeth. And he had like a miswak, so that's what he was using as a toothbrush. So that stuck out. And then he started doing this weird ritual with water and stuff, and putting it down his arms. And then he'd take his feet and put them in the sink. And make sure to get between the toes, and so we're like, what is this guy, like, who
Wow.
is he? But
Did
he's
it, did
very,
it seem
very,
did it seem mystical at all at the time? Like to these, like, I'm
yeah. I
assuming
mean,
other.
I think the natural thing to do when someone's different, unfortunately, when you're in high school or ninth grade, is to make fun of that person. But he was sort of like Teflon. It didn't really work to make fun of him, because he was so charismatic and so on. Um, and after he would make wudu, he'd go back to his room, and he'd call the adhan out loud. So we'd just be walking through this, like, St. Mark's, and we'd hear the Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And so, obviously the adhan is a call, and eventually some of us responded to the call, and and we saw that how committed he was to the faith. Like at football practice, it was the same thing. He'd be making wudu with like the the Gatorade bottle, the water from the Gatorade bottles and stuff. And so, and he just be,
Hilarious.
as if you pray 5 times a day, especially as the sunset gets towards winter time, you have to pray all the time. So it was just, he's completely open, and with his faith and confident in it. So eventually there were 3 of us who got increasingly interested. We used to sneak out of our dorm room at night and we'd go over to his room after lights out, after the dorm parent had gone to bed, and he had these books like Spectacles of Death, and they were all these like stories of the akhirah and like really scary stuff. And we just got increasingly interested, and alhamdulillah, the other two brothers actually embraced Islam a little bit before I did. That's Huzaifa and Nuruddin, who I think you also know both of them.
So these two other guys who later embraced Islam, they were part of this group of your friends that
yep.
Witnessed this character.
What?
That these three people that you're listening, that was your crew back in the day.
Yep, exactly. And they remain some of my closest friends to this day. So alhamdulillah, Nabil's father had gone for Hajj with Hakeem Olajuwon, and this was at the height of his basketball career. So one day when the Rockets were in town to play the Celtics, Hakeem came to St. Mark's, and he sat on the floor. He still towered over everyone, even though he's sitting on the floor. But he just spoke about Islam and how much it had changed his life, and that was very, very powerful. And there were some other speakers that he had come for chapel and so on. And alhamdulillah, it was a long process, but eventually the three of us embraced Islam, and alhamdulillah. So
Allah, man. Thanks for
so to
sharing.
connect that to what I've obviously my life changed at the age of 15, and when I look back on it, most of my career in education has been teaching that exact same age group. So ninth and 10th grade is sort of the sweet spot for me, especially 10th grade. There's something about that age of 15 that's very, very special, because it's a time when those adolescents, they're no longer children, they're no longer just parroting whatever their parents said, but they're also not adults, and they don't purport to or feel like they know everything. They're sort of like putty in your hands. They're quite malleable, and a lot of times people take decisions at that time. They're not always religious decisions, but big decisions that have a huge impact on the trajectory of their lives, when they're that age. And I think a lot of my professional life has been about trying to work with that age group, just because I think of all the times when you can have the most long lasting impact. That's really where it is. When I look at the teachers that I had around that time in my life, just incredible impact. And I think that it's one of the things that led me to the sort of work that I do here. I've taught English in grades 6 through 10, but mostly high school English. I've been the head of the humanities department. I've been the assistant head of school. And then throughout my time, I've also been the guidance counselor and in charge of college placement. And so those are long.
That's a beautiful, verbal resume, just like boom, boom, boom. A lot of diverse work with community building, education, different areas, different points of study. Yeah, it's a very rich background. It's again very interesting, all the experiences you've had. And now, you've done something very powerful and kind of cultivated yourself into this potentialized or actualized entrepreneur. And that's always a very exciting step to take or venture on. Something I did myself, and again, an entrepreneur just means in the first step is, can I provide for my family without working for someone, but working for myself? That's what, the first and hardest step. And this is something you're currently doing with Five Before College. And why don't you tell us more about that? Because this is a really fascinating project, and it's something that our community certainly is in need of. And I think it kind of connects with the topic or importance or value of education within the American Muslim community.
Right, absolutely. So as I said, at Al Noor, I've done lots of things, but probably the highest impact thing was helping with the college placement. So the very first student I ever had to place, Hamzah, got in early to Harvard. Uh, and uh,
great first results right
yeah,
there for
great.
you, huh?
Yeah,
Mashallah.
beginner's luck. But Hamza, we continued to do very well. Placing a lot of students into great schools, Ivies, and many other schools, and placing all of the students into four-year colleges where, inshallah, they could find success. I realized that obviously the relationships which you form with these students are just incredibly deep. I knew these students from the time they were in sixth grade all the way to the time they graduated. But I was having a very, very deep impact, but it was a narrow impact because it was just on the students within the walls of my school. And I really wanted to take this expertise that I've developed as someone who, went through the whole college application process myself, and then later advised people for a long time, and helped so many people find college. I wanted to bring those services to the ummah as a whole. And I think one of the secrets of our success at Al Noor, which is a very small school, shoestring budget, of the niche does this ranking of private schools, and I can't remember what number we are, 35th or something in New England, and pretty much all of the other, by far, we have the lowest tuition of any of the schools in the niche top 100, under $10,000, which by private school standards is insane. So I was thinking, what's the key to that success? And I think a lot of it is that I knew those students for so long, and because we're a 6 through 12 school, that where the middle school is seeing the high schoolers regularly and so on, it's such a small place, this idea that you're going to college and you're preparing for college from sort of the moment you enter that school is sort of built into the ethos of the school. And I think for a lot of people, they think applying to college is something that happens your senior year, or at most maybe you start thinking about it seriously your junior year. But what I like tell people in the name of the company is that it starts 5 years before college, right? So way back in eighth grade is, and certainly ninth grade is when you have to really start thinking. Eighth grade sort of like the PSAT. It doesn't actually count. Your hisab has not started. You're not mukallaf in eighth grade, but the way you treat the eighth grade year, you're able to hit the ground running. You're also obviously oftentimes making choices about where to go to high school, what kind of a high school to go to. Should I go to the public school in my town? Should I consider an Islamic school? What about private school, homeschool, those kinds of things. And then certainly from you become baligh as soon as ninth grade starts, and that's when your colleges are looking at what you do, and so giving students guidance, especially in those early years, beginning with the end in mind, knowing where they're trying to get to, can be incredibly valuable. And so that's part of the 5 before college. The other thing is one of my favorite hadiths is the 5 before 5 hadith.
What's that one about?
So اغتنموا خمسا قبل خمس. So take advantage of 5 things before 5. So and then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam enumerated these five things. So your youth before your old age, your health before your sickness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your busyness, and your life before your death. Right. So these five things, it's like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had that quality of Jawam al-Kalim, where he was able to pack so much meaning into so few words. Right. So so I think that this so I started a weekly newsletter called 5 before 5 early in this year in 2023, where essentially I use this hadith as a jumping off point to share sort of 5 reflections that bring in some of the best thinking of sort of Western thinkers and writers and stuff that I'm reading and hearing on podcasts and so on, and blending it with, you know, the wisdom of Islam, and really trying to you know, cater both to a Muslim audience, obviously, but also even to non-Muslims who, you know, might not know you know, how you know, the beauty of the deen and the depth of our tradition, and so on. So, but this 5 before 5 hadith also maps very much onto the high school experience. You know, take advantage of your youth before your old age, right? So what does that mean? That's where I put in the academic piece, right? That's one, you know, the job of a young person is that they're a student. So academics do need to come first, no matter how much I like to talk about everything else. If you don't have the academics, you're not going to be a very competitive college candidate. But the key to succeeding academically, in my opinion, is as simple as one word: just read, right? Iqra, right? People who read are just fundamentally more interesting people. You know, colleges are really looking for people that they would want to have, they could have an interesting conversation with, right? And so many kids today are so sucked up in, you know, digital sort of algorithms and this kind of thing, that they don't have, you know, those really interesting ideas, and those can only come from reading really deeply and reading really widely and broadly, and so on. And all of these other things, your health before your sickness, deals with sort of athletics and wellness, and you know, being involved athletically, and your wealth before your poverty. This looks at internships and getting, you know, having sort of a career orientation and exploration while you're in high school. Your free time before your busyness. I mean, this is, you know, how you decide to spend your free time, what you do with your extracurriculars, what your friends look like, your suhbah, right? And then your life before your death. This is where I talk about, you know, your values, your moral core, your faith, your you know, religious practice, that sort of thing. So essentially, if you're able to have, you know, the 5 years before college focusing on those 5 areas, then, you know, it's not that you're doing all that for the sake of college. It's just like, if you do all that, then colleges are going to be running after you, because you're this amazing, you know, a fully formed kid that they would want to have on their campus. When a Muslim fully embraces their deen and you know, ihsan and all of these things, they're just, you know, they're amazing kids, and that's exactly, you know, what colleges are looking for. So that's sort of the big idea, is trying to speak to Muslim teenagers, create a community of Muslim teenagers who are ambitious for the dunya, but ambitious for the akhirah as well, and you know, give them a space, a platform to advise one another, to learn from one another, and yeah, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. I love that breakdown, the 5 before 5, and how you're trying to, in a sense, operationalize or have a practical way for youth to make meaning of these things. And the first one you said about, you know, just to read is such an important thing, that it's so easy. I mean, I did some reading today, and, you know, in a book form, I mean, right? And me personally, it's been something that I've enjoyed a lot in the past, and just sort of dropped the ball on it, like other things, like when I had, mashallah, a efflorescent family, you know, just you know, blossom a little too soon than what I expected, but Allah's the great planner. And so you kind of drop some of those things, but picking up a book and just reading,
Yeah,
it is such an important space to keep cultivating with yourself. And naturally, it's like anything else, when you start reading more often, you can absorb and do it faster, and it's just like, it's like a healthy almost appetite or addiction, if you know, a good dependency or a good coping mechanism, as well as it actually brings you value. Like, if exercise is something that helps you relieve stress, that's great, because it also builds your body stronger and gives you stamina. It's like a good, profound habit. And
Right.
this is something I think we're really going to struggle with existentially. I mean, how are you doing with that as a father? I know you have two kids, right? Like, how is their reading habits?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely alhamdulillah, I think my son has gotten, more into reading. He's 11 now, and I've started to, not catch him, but see him reading, when he hasn't been asked to. We've been homeschooling for a long time, so there were periods of, silent sustained reading built into their school day. So that was always there. But I didn't always see them doing it outside of that time. But now I'm starting to more, which is great. Um, One of the life hacks I've developed now is, when someone mentions a book, or I hear about it on a podcast, or essentially when it's recommended, like I immediately go to eBay, and typically you can get these books for under $5 on eBay. So I just go to it, and then I just click buy now. So as you can see, there are a few books behind me. And it's amazing because, like, I think these two shelves are books I bought within the last year.
Wow.
And they're, obviously I'm really interested in entrepreneurship now. I already had read a lot about college, but I better read everything I possibly can if I'm going to be this
Yeah.
expert in college. And, obviously Islamic stuff and things like that. So and then I don't know if this is the best way to read, but I essentially, wherever I hang out in the house, I sort of put 3 or 4 different books there. And then I try to, set a timer on my phone to spend like a good 20-25 minutes, reading, in a focused way, now that I have more control over my time. So I think, there are strategies you can use. And a lot of it, like you said, is modeling. I think if the kids only see us on our cell phones, which they certainly do, they see me on my phone a lot,
Totally.
then that's what they're gonna do. But if we show them ourselves, that we put this as a priority, then we can. The sad thing is, there's some crazy statistic like 80% of kids don't pick up another book after they graduate high school or college or something like that. It's just it's sad, because there's so much wisdom, inside these pages. And as I learn more about, certain Western concepts, marketing and things like that I hadn't studied very deeply, I see how much of it is reflected in the Deen, and so on. And so yeah, subhanAllah, there's a lot to be said.
I'm just visualizing that the one problem or flaw with books is the weight.
Mm.
As someone, who's traveled, there's always a hit, books you want to take with you.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have to move your whole life somewhere, and you've got, mashallah, such a collection, it's like the one day the technology where we'll have like little, digital folders, and they'll open and sometimes manifest and put together the,
Right.
molecular part and just be actual organic book all of a sudden, and I can read it and then, press a code and it can go back down.
Yeah, mashallah.
That'll be cool because you can still.
Yeah. I had a long period of using the Kindle, and I still do occasionally. And I certainly do read a lot on the phone. I read a lot of newsletters and articles and other people that I really appreciate. And the nice thing about those is, like, the digital highlighting and things are great. It's an easier way to sort of take notes and get them all sort of into one place. So whatever works for people. But I've definitely moved back towards analog in a lot of things. Like I have notebooks all around me at all times where I take actual handwritten notes and things like that. So, as far as technology has advanced, I think going back to the basics often, is where it's at.
Yeah, I always have paper and pen as well on my desk, no matter what.
Right.
And different ways of written language. I also have a nice board, visual cues, and so forth.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what are your thoughts about audiobooks? Now, it's not the same as holding a book or reading it. And of course, when you see it and think about it, or even you're saying it to yourself, on some level, there's multiple levels of activation when you truly engage a book. But people also have learned so many things through oral tradition and human history. And nowadays, there are certainly people who can down 50 audiobooks in a year, right? And in many ways, they're exposed to valuable information. What are your thoughts about audiobooks
Yeah,
as an educator?
I love audiobooks. I was just listening, to From Strength to Strength by Arthur C. Brooks earlier today on a walk. During the pandemic, one of the things that it really helped me with was establishing a walking habit. There was nothing else to do. I downloaded an amazing app called All Trails, and it just showed me right in my own backyard, right here in Mansfield, like how many different trails and things there are.
No way.
And
That's a really cool app.
I would just, essentially, I think I've walked down every street in my town and many of the surrounding towns. And I did it most of the time while listening to audiobooks. So another great app recommendation is Libby, which is you can access through the public library, and that gives you access to free audiobooks, or you have to check them out of the library for a period of time. But that's great. And then, in addition to audiobooks, I think podcasts are the other thing that I do a lot. So I'm very much an auditory learner. I love audio. And one thing I notice about walking and audio is it really helps with the memory. Like, I remember even later when I walk down the same path, I can remember what I was listening to at that particular point.
Oh, that's so interesting, because you got encoded at the time.
Exactly.
There's something about the physiological emotion that activates perhaps the reception or the sinking in, the imprint, like your
100%.
body's more activated, which means the mind's going to be more activated than if you're just, because if you pick up a book after 4 hours of being, immobile, probably does affect the level of absorption.
So yeah, I really Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, which I never used to read because I thought the title was so sort of asinine, I guess. I just figured it was, it didn't have any real depth, but then it kept on showing up on like books you should read. So I was like, okay, fine. So I started listening to that, and that's one of the things which sort of catalyzed this whole entrepreneurial journey, because it really laid out, a whole new way of thinking about our professional lives and what we're trying to do. I highly recommend that. Go to eBay right now and buy a 4-Hour Work.
So you judged this book up front, it was asinine, and then it actually like flung you into this entrepreneurial energy. So
yeah, no, and I know I'm far from the only one. But I wanted to figure out, okay, so what's Tim Ferriss doing now? And I find out, lo and behold, he has like one of the most popular podcasts on, in the world. And so that's one.
That was like one of your favorite podcasts.
Yeah. So I've learned so much from him, and he leads me to other thinkers and so on. And so yeah, there are some great podcasters out there, and I find that format works well because you can sometimes consume it in maybe 1 hour or 2 long walk, whereas audiobooks are obviously long. The last year or two, I've been doing mostly nonfiction. I am in this sort of entrepreneurial kick and trying to learn as much as I can, and I've swung a little bit away from fiction, which I'm sort of sad about. I love fiction as well, and I teach it and all that, but definitely. If there are kids listening to this, I don't know what your audience looks like, but reading, and adults for that matter, adults need to read too. I mean, it's such a gift. This is what people used to do, back before we had all these digital devices. In the evening, everyone would be sitting around, reading books and reading the newspaper and so on. And it's walking, reading, these are the simple things in life that that we need to get back to.
Yeah. I don't know if that argument works though with youth, like because we used to do it before, you guys would like it. But it's
I'm not,
more to me,
yeah,
it's more about like of course it's about, you know, the actual activity and impression it leaves on a developing human being. And the fact that we've been engaging knowledge through oral tradition and script, you know, that's, and all this surface digital stuff is new, which doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, right?
right.
But I think it's just when you go back to, let's say, being in the middle way, which is a virtue or principle in most religious views, it's like being balanced, right? So including ourselves, it's like I am on my phone too much because we've now made so many things we need to do through the phone, right? You make payments, you pay bills, you make phone calls, you have meetings like this, you do work, you socialize. And so it's very difficult to get out of that
Right.
zone. But that's why, you know, we're kind of emphasizing, and I would argue that being connected to books is part of the principle of, you know, health and balance of like, we have to stay connected to nature for God's sake. And
100%.
books is one of the ways that we actually are engaged in our nature. And it's also written on a tree, and it's physical and it lasts, and it has, you know, it's part of our heritage in so many ways, right? I mean, nothing would have happened in civilization without reading and knowledge in general. So it's a really cool, it's if that one thing is something everyone in this year can accomplish, like having a good reading goal,
right?
It would make such a big difference in your life, you know?
Absolutely.
And reading also, it's like, has, just like online you have infinite channels and media and things you can engage, reading, you know, has the same things. Like you want to learn how to grow a business, there's a bunch of powerful books that can actually enlighten your brain and consciousness to go do something that you could have never done before. If you're into fiction or fantasy or medical, I mean, there's books on everything, probably more nuanced than YouTube, believe it or not, you know. It's just, there's,
or TikTok.
it's amazing. Yeah, or TikTok.
Right.
But,
I mean,
you know,
not to say that there's not good stuff on YouTube there, you know. I mean, that's
no, I love YouTube, bro. I love it.
I think
we're not housing on it.
Yeah, no, I think sometimes kids feel like we're coming at them when we talk about these things, and there are, you know, there are different ways
at you, kids.
There's different ways you can use TikTok, you know, and I think, you know, I actually find, you know, if I want to learn something quickly, TikTok's actually not the worst resource in the world. I started CrossFit recently, and the very first day we had to do this thing called the Turkish get up, and I'm like, what is the Turkish get up? So it's this move that I will not demonstrate, but it's a sort of complicated way to get up. You have like a kettlebell in your hand, and it's this move. So, but anyway, I was struggling with it. There's a lot of moving parts and so on. So then I go to TikTok and I'm like, Turkish get up, and you know, I watch like, you know, like 15
hundreds of people.
I've seen the world record Turkish get up, and I've, you know,
oh my God.
And so then I'm asking the Turkish kids at school, like, so when you want to get up from the floor, is this what you guys do? You know, but yeah, you know, TikTok has you know, has some good stuff. I've actually started filming some videos that I'm gonna create a TikTok. Apparently that's the way you reach my target audience. So I'm embarking on this new path.
It is. I have not even, dude, I think I downloaded it, but I've never quite used it except for it being a link from something else.
Right.
But as an entrepreneur, would you recommend, like, this is one of the most powerful marketing tools?
I mean, it really depends on what your audience is. You know, you know, for better or worse, I need to reach kids where the kids aren't on Facebook, right? I mean, I can talk to their parents on Facebook, and the parents, you know, are often the clients, right? So that's a good place. But if you really want to get in front of kids, you need to be on Discord, you need to be on TikTok, you need to be in the places where kids hang out. You know, and they're not all like I said, it's not all bad. The problem is when, the dopamine hits come and you get into the doom scrolling, or just like, I mean, it can suck you in. It's so powerful. Like people who think they can beat the algorithm, that these brilliant, evil computer scientist people in Silicon Valley,
Well,
it's
no,
really not.
TikTok's Chinese, dude,
Yeah,
right? Well,
yeah, that's
so
true. Yeah, but the point is, like, social media can suck you. I mean, LinkedIn does it for me because
well, they all do this. The point here is that it's literally a robot hand coming out of the screen, grabbing you by the neck, and it just
right,
wants to hold your face to its screen, pressed up against it, and it
right,
doesn't want to let go. That's what they're accomplishing through
mhm,
algorithms,
right,
right? That's like the metaphysical experience. Is like,
right,
and you just face is all stuck up again.
yeah,
And it's like it doesn't matter, and I mean, I try at least when it comes to that to intentionally leave this device behind, so if I take my kids to the park, I don't
mm,
bring my phone, I
yeah,
just don't. Or if we're going to sit down and have family dinner, I don't have a phone on that table. I usually
mhm,
put it in my backpack, which I use to go to work and so forth. And so that helps a lot designating, it's just not going to be
home
with
free
you,
space,
because
yeah,
like you said, you also want to, engage the kids or engage people around you. You have to first put your device down. A lot of us will be like, oh, everyone's on their phone, so I'll go on my phone too.
right,
And we fall into it, right?
mhm,
Because it's easier and I can just chill and get my dopamine or whatever I'm seeking, right? But it is very important to try that. And
right.
no matter what the age, like it's really, plus we don't know all the electromagnetic energy that's just been busting our nerves in our hands. I mean, how many of us are going to have wrist problems and finger and neck
Mhm.
problems because we're always looking down?
Right. SubhanAllah. Inshallah. Um, yeah, but mashallah, I think I think that, like you said, Din al-Wasat, there's a middle way, you know, uh I think that's one of the main things I've learned by being around teenagers. Like we like to sort of like say these millennials or whatever we're on to now, Gen Z or something, like, have people like cast them as these very shallow and non-thoughtful people, and that's just not the case, or at least it's not universal. So the
Right.
students that I work with just blow me away with their sincerity, with their curiosity, with their ambition. I mean, it's really exciting working with young people. And I think that's been one of the great things about, Five Before College. That you know when I was a teacher, there was always, there's the whole 80-20 principle. So there's always like 20% of the kids who are really like excited, they're hanging on your every word, they want to get the full benefit of the class. And then, the majority are just, many of them are just sort of there, or they have to be in school, and so on. But when you do a business like this, the people who come to your events, the people who sign up for your classes, they're there by their own volition for the most part, and they're really eager, and they want the help themselves. So it's like you're working with, a group of those 20 percenters. So it's been really energizing, to work with these young people. And it's uh and the other thing I would say about college is, a lot of times my first meeting with the parents is just like, so there are a few schools that my son could go to. Harvard would be okay, Stanford, maybe Yale, Princeton. That's about the list. and
So
and
like a parent like approaches you and basically says, here's the menu that I want you to
right,
somehow
this doesn't
activate,
always happen,
fulfill.
but that
Okay.
does
But
that
once
does
in a while you'll get this energy, this frequency, which is still really funny, but
right. And exactly, because oftentimes, those are the parents who know the least amount about the process, and so on. And the reality is there are so many great universities in this country, and really you need to focus on, the fit. And there's so many other factors that go into whether.
having the prestigious name.
Exactly, the prestige is just not, you know I mean, you know, if you're a really exceptional student and you've had this amazing high school career, and these schools are possibilities for you, by all means, like, alhamdulillah, I did go to Harvard. I had a wonderful experience there. I you know, almost all positive things to say about the school. And all these other you know, great brand name schools are great as well. But the fact is, like SIT, you know, where I went to graduate school, I often tell people I got more in 1 year there than I did in 4 years at Harvard. Right? It was just a life-changing experience. They didn't have grades there. They just had sort of like a portfolio and comment system, and you know, and the way I got to know my teachers and my professors and my classmates, it was just it was incredible. And so there are a lot of sort of small colleges out there, and you know, other places that, you know, if it fits you,
You will get an exceptional education if it's the right, compatible and fit,
exactly.
right?
And then, you know, there's the financial piece to it. You know, I think if you can graduate debt free, you know, that's almost always the best option, right? Like you know, people go into just, you know, horrific amounts of student debt, and you know, let alone the whole riba issue. Like, it's just, you know, it shackles you, and it changes like the sorts of careers you can look at. You can't necessarily go into something that's sort of service oriented because you really need to, you know, make the money to pay it back. It's a, you know, it's a difficult world that's out there. But if you play your cards right, you know, it can be a really good investment. I mean, not to plug, you know, independent counseling, but you know, if you spend $1,000 up front and it ends up helping you shave off $100,000 from your college bill by directing you to the right place or helping you get the right scholarship or whatever the case may be, obviously that's a pretty good investment, right? You know, and I find that a lot of Muslim families, they love what you say and they like it, but then when you suggest that, like, okay, you should probably consider investing in this, they, like, you know, it's like this thought, you know, how could I, you know, that doesn't make sense. Like, this should just be for free. But the reality is, if you look at other communities, this is what they do. I mean, you look at what private schools are charging people today. You know, even when I was at Fay, international boarding students were paying $75,000 a year for middle school.
Oh my God.
75 grand for middle school.
So,
you know, it's just
crazy,
it's insane. And you know, and this is what parents, obviously well-heeled parents, but what they're willing to do to try to give their kids you know, a leg up and so on, you know. But I don't think it needs to be as complicated as that. Like I said, if you focus on those, you know, 5 before 5 things, you know, you can you know, really have just an extraordinary life. And first and foremost is your deen. You know, if you can you know, really just learn the deen and take it at, like I think with me as a convert, you know, people will say things to me like, you are Muslim by choice and I am Muslim by chance, therefore you are better than me. And this,
no, you still got to choose, even if
this
you're
never
born
makes
Muslim.
sense to me, right? Because we're all Muslims by choice. First of all, يهدي من يشاء ويضل من يشاء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whomsoever he wills and leads astray whomsoever he wills. So we're all Muslim by the choice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But secondly, like, every single Muslim needs to choose Islam as their way of life, right? That you don't, just because your dad's a doctor doesn't make you a doctor. You need to go through many years of training in order to have the same degree.
Correct.
Right? But we don't understand this with the deen. So we all need to be Muslim by choice. And so the biggest thing that can happen at that age of 15 is that people make the choice to be Muslim, not because their parents told them, you know, but because they want to. They make the decision, I'm never going to miss one of my prayers again. Right? When kids make that decision and they're like, khalas, like, I'm a musalli, I'm you know, this is a top priority, that you know, that in case I forget or something happens, you know, I'm not going to miss another prayer. These are life-changing things. And so at that point, you know, who cares where they end up going to college, right? If they, you know, they're on a path to eternal success, right? And of course, the college follows along because you find someone who's very grounded and has, you know, strong values and things like that. So, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it comes down to what we value. But to summarize, it sounds like you are able to help students. It's you're trying to do a holistic approach as far as the values of your service, right? But you do take them through this practical process of identifying different schools, why certain schools may stand out. Like I'm sure you've built some kind of a database of like, you know, alternative schools or other pathways for students looking for that. I mean, in a sense, you could also, you're trying to help people figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives, but college happens to be one that many of us will end up choosing or going through, or that's just a convention, right?
Right.
But do you feel like there are people who not going to college is actually going to be something that could be good for them? Like in your opinion,
Definitely.
as far as that's just part of the society, and
Right.
not everyone's going to be academic and so forth.
I absolutely think that, and work. So at my school, one of the big statistics they always take pride in is that every one of our graduates, 100% have gone on to 4-year universities, which is true as far as I know, but they haven't all graduated from those 4-year universities, right? And that's the more important statistic. Just getting people into college isn't that impressive, and there are a lot, not a lot, but usually there's a small handful of students for whom college doesn't make sense, or it certainly doesn't make sense right now. If a kid is like incredibly good with their hands or something, they're not academically inclined at all, but they love cars and something like that, or they're great with machines or something like that. Like you can be an HVAC repair person, you can be an electrician, you can be an auto mechanic, there's so many careers that aren't getting outsourced and not getting replaced by AI. You can be a plumber.
And people need them every day, and
exactly
with things we use every single day. It's some of the most practical things, and you can be very successful if you're good at anything
you're making 6 figures in your early 20s. You can settle down, you can get married. So absolutely, that path makes a lot of sense. I think vocational school is a wonderful thing. It wouldn't have been great for me because I'm incredibly bad with my hands, and so on, but for certain kids, absolutely. For better or worse, I need to sort of choose a lane and a niche, and this world of college and everything is what I know best. But I would love to, advise Muslim youth as a whole. And I certainly don't think going to a name brand college is the only path to success, or even going to college itself. I think sometimes going to community college for 2 years and then transferring is a path that makes a lot of sense.
It's very smart. Yeah.
It's often financially, the best path to go. So I think there are so many different pathways to success, and I think it's important for Muslims to put their prestige aside, right? They don't put on your gravestone, where you went to college, what your GPA was, what your bank balance is. These are not things that ultimately matter. Those aren't announced on Yawm al-Qiyamah and those kinds of things. So
we're not gathered with our alumni on Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Yeah, I guess there's not a Harvard section under the arsh, Alhamdulillah. Well, inshallah, there will be, but
for the right reasons.
Anyways, I know some brothers who belong.
No, but I get your point. I mean, we have to remember that, I've always tried to understand the concept of the dunya as the human constructed or human, developed aspects of life and living that make us heedless or forgetful of God, no matter what it is, right? So having work, ibadah, having a job is a type of ibadah. But if my ibadah now becomes my job, it now becomes a very dunya thing that I go to work, right? It has to do with the state of self and how we're engaging the process. And, you're reminding us here, of course, of anything that's taken too far and makes us forgetful of the ultimate reasons or purpose of being here, which is to take our means, seriously. At the same time, if most of us want to make money, and be able to provide for a family, which is, everybody wants that. It's about understanding what's the best way I can do that. But more importantly, part of our purpose or meaning of life is to make meaning of it and to find purpose. And so I think it's also just a good reminder for people to trust that, there's going to be people born with different powers and different tracks and missions and ways of giving value to society. And many of them can be very lucrative or financially rewarding. And it's just being more open to doing more with our talent as a community, rather than doing less by continuing to pursue the same industries or tracks or degrees because of prestige or because of, again, there's many jobs you can make 6 figures and it doesn't have to be a doctor, right? There's many things you could develop or do and eventually make that amount of money, right? If people want to make money, that's possible in many avenues. And I think that's important to know this. I mean, I even spoke, someone working really hard, doing a car service can make 10K a month if you really want to. And you have certain strategies around airports and hours and route, and you become a master at your job, no matter what it is. You can always be successful, right? And what do you respect more? A person who's like, you go into someone's house, it's really nice, they have a nice car, they're very gracious, generous. You can tell, like, oh, these guys are doing financially great. And it turns out the guy is X, Y, and Z, something you never would associate with, your upbringing as something worthy of pursuit. There's many people in stories like this.
Oh,
right?
100%.
And you have to humble yourself and recognize, like, knowledge is, in a sense, often can be horizontal. And what gives it the depth or power impact is if you do it well, like, no matter what you do. If you want to be a violin player, like, you do it with ihsan as much as possible, right? But that can only happen if we're honest and authentic with ourselves about pursuing a passion, or let's call it a God-given talent, or something that makes you feel happy and it doesn't feel like work, even though it is when you do it or pursue it. Like, people should be open to seeing their lives and future in such a way.
Right. And that's where I put a plug in for liberal arts. I think I can't remember the last time I talked to a student or a parent who wasn't like STEM oriented, right? And I have no problem with
it just comes with the territory. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, with STEM, but the fact, like, in this letter that my dad wrote that I found sort of the day after he died, he was sort of ruminating and so on, and he was saying how much joy he gets from just walking in the fields and so on. And then he asks, will our grandchildren have it this good? Right. And then he continues to answer his own question. He says, I think so, if they learn to read widely and write proficiently and all this kind of stuff. And he was a fanatic about the liberal arts, and and I think it's so important that we can study the STEM fields, and there's nothing wrong with that, but study philosophy as well. Study something. I wrote a line sort of suggesting that, and one of my students, she's from Al Noor. She's at Williams, and now she's doing a year at Oxford. And she talked about various different humanities classes that she's taking at Oxford right now. And she said, this is, when I read that line, it really resonated with me, because what you and my wife was also her teacher had taught. This is why I'm here in this classroom today. So that's the sort of thing.
I know the line you're referring to. I actually was gonna share it, but
I like to talk to when I'm speaking to parents about sort of two different philosophies or metaphors that we can use for parenting, either being a carpenter parent or a gardener parent, right? So the carpenter parent is someone who has a blueprint, has something that they're trying to build, has a goal in mind, and then they just try to follow those steps to get to that goal, right? And this is the mindset that I think a lot of Muslim parents, well-intentioned Muslim parents, have for their children, where they try to plan out their entire path with the ultimate goal of college, and then a particular career, and this and that. And that's one path versus the gardener mindset, right? So the gardener is someone who plants the seeds, and then fences it in, creates some sort of irrigation system, but ultimately knows that there's so many factors out of their control, that the garden is going to grow as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes for it to grow, and so they're able to adjust to it. They're really focused on the process and putting the right tools in place rather than the ultimate outcome. And so same thing, for a gardener parent, the choice of college is not about a particular name brand or a particular field of study and a particular career. It's more like, what is our child, they're like a sunflower, what are they gravitating towards, right? And I think that that gardener parenting style isn't something that's very common within the Muslim world. I think a lot of parents are very they really see essentially medicine or engineering as like the only two viable career paths, and it's just simply not the case. Like, there are so many paths to much more wealth, for one thing. If someone who starts a small business that's a successful small business, can make far more money than even a very successful doctor or engineer, and they have the freedom of being in control of their own time. But there's so many other paths, and with this AI revolution that we're going through right now, who knows exactly what careers we're preparing kids for. So really the purpose of a college education, a college trained mind, is to give people the ability to think and the ability to be flexible and adapt,
problem solve, be creative, adapt. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's something that actually has to help you live and breathe, testing, tweaking, repeating, as far as your life choices, engaging things. You can't, assume things are just going to be like dominoes or handed to you, or, oh, I take this step, it'll take me to this step. Like, you actually have to, the greatest investment is yourself, right? 100%. Everything else is just a label that you may or may not be able to use. But in the end of the day, it comes down to how you cultivate yourself.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's why we live in an amazing time. There's this guy, Alex Hormozy, who's a sort of a really interesting young thinker and entrepreneur. And he always talks about investing in the S&Me 500. So essentially, like, the single best returns you can get is by investing in yourself. And by, and that's things like taking classes, for a small business owner, paying for executive coaching and things like that, trying to level up your skills and so on. If you're interested in real estate and you go to a $500 like weekend seminar, and you end up closing real estate deals of $500,000 and up, the return on investment is amazing. So investing in yourself. And these days, I think, like, obviously I still believe in college. It's my whole business and everything. But a lot of times, if there's an expert within your field, someone that you're interested in, someone that writes stuff that resonates with you, most likely they probably offer some sort of course or something like that you can actually take with them and learn directly, from someone that you already know that you respect, and so on. There's so many ways to upgrade your skills these days, and that's one of the best things that parents can do is to support that for their kids. If they, like, my daughter loves video editing and so on. So if when she had to get a new computer, she needed a MacBook
good features,
Pro.
good specs.
She run a MacBook Pro, which was a little out of the price range. So I said, well, you need to create sort of a Shark Tank type presentation, and then I'm going to get you in front of some investors, namely your grandparents, and and then she had to make her case for why it made sense for her to get a pricier laptop, and so she put the work in, and she had this cute little presentation, and mashallah, she got Photoshop, and so on. And it's those kinds of investments that we make in our kids, and that we should make in ourselves as well, that make a huge difference. People they're so myopic. Their short-term thinking is such that they don't recognize that spending a little bit of money today can bring so much in return. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, man. I love it. I love everything that you're reminding us of here today. Some great advice. We'll have the links of Hamzah's contact, websites, information, program in the description of the show. Hamzah Henshaw, thank you so much for joining me today on Coffee with Kareem. God bless you and your family.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Such a pleasure to see you, and hope to see you in the flesh sometime soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Only if you get a big old hug.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Coffee with Kareem podcast.